In this lesson, we're going to be finding the surface area using formulas. So we can find surface area using three different methods. The first method is to find the area of all the faces combined. Now, when we say all the faces, when we're talking about a rectangular prism, we're looking at the top and bottom, the front and back, and the left and the right faces. Altogether, 6 faces for a rectangular prism. So you find the area of all those faces and then combine them. The second method involved unfolding the rectangular prism into a net. Once you have the net as a two-dimensional drawing, then you can find the composite area. So the area of all the faces are now arranged in a two-dimensional format, and you can find the area. The third method involves using a formula. The one trick with formulas is you have to identify what the base is. So we're going to look at a surface area formula for a rectangular prism. And this is going to involve some key terms or variables that maybe you're not familiar with. The formula for surface area is 2 times capital B plus capital P times H. So we need to clarify what those variables represent. Capital B represents the area of the base. If you see it shaded here, the area of the base is a rectangle, and that should be easy enough to find. Capital P represents the perimeter of the base. So that same base, you have to find both the area and the perimeter. And hopefully you brushed up on what the perimeter is. And then lowercase h represents the height of the prism. Now the height needs to be perpendicular to that base. So we have an example here. And we see we have our dimensions. So we should identify what those dimensions represent. And it probably will help to write them out. The length of the base here is 8 inches. The width could also be called the depth, and that's 10 inches. And then the height, again, needs to be perpendicular to the base, is 2 inches. So next, we must calculate the area and the perimeter of the base. To calculate the area of this base, we simply multiply the length times the width. The length, again, was 8. The width, or depth, is 10. So 8 times 10 gives us 80. Now, the perimeter, okay, we could either add up the 2 lengths and the 2 widths, or recognize that the lengths are the same, the widths are the same, so we have the formula 2L plus 2W. We substitute in what we know for our length and width, and we get a perimeter of 36. And now, using the formula for surface area, again, that's 2 times capital B, which represents the area of the base, plus capital P, the perimeter of the base, times the perpendicular height. Again, substituting in what we calculated, we have 2 times 80, which gives us 160, plus 36 times 2, which gives us 72. Finally, we add those together, and we have 232 inches squared. Now, for a triangular prism, the formula is the same. Okay, so we haven't changed anything there. But obviously, something has changed. Specifically, it's the base. We see here that we have a triangular base. So B, again, represents the area of the base, but the base is always the triangular surface. The perimeter, represented by capital P, of the base will be a 3-sided triangle. Again, the height of the prism has to be perpendicular. So really you can see the only thing that's changed is instead of a rectangle, we have a triangle. And this is the difference in how we're going to calculate. So we have an example here. Now you'll notice this particular triangular prism is not resting on its base. Now, many of you may look at this and figure, well, the base is a rectangle, isn't it? And the answer is no. We have to look at this a little bit different and recognize that this particular surface here, the triangle, this is our base. And we have one, and then we can see in the back, I'm going to use a dotted line just so it highlights it, and I'll put a few lines through it just so we see it in the back there. Okay, so those are our two bases. So we see it forms the shape of a triangle, and that's what we have to use as the base. So keeping that in mind, we're going to write down the dimensions. Okay, the length of the base, don't forget, length of the base is 8 millimeters. The width, also could be called the depth, is 15 millimeters. Okay, now the length and the width when it comes to the triangular prism, okay, those you could interchange, but you have to have the triangle as your base. The height, again, has to be perpendicular to the base, and in this case, we have 9 millimeters. Now, some of you may be asking, well, what about this 17 millimeters? We're going to need that for the perimeter. Again, we have to remember that the perimeter, that's adding up all the sides. So I'm going to use a different color here. Let's go with blue. We need to know this side on the triangle in order to calculate what the perimeter is, because we have one side of 8 millimeters, a second side of 15 millimeters, and we would need to know what this is, and we know it's given as 17 millimeters. So that's where that comes into play. So just as we did before, we have to calculate the area and perimeter of the base. Now, in this case, since we have a triangle, the area of a triangle is 1/2 of the 8 times the 15, okay? And that's going to give us 60. The perimeter, we just finished going over that. That's going to be the 8 millimeters plus the 15 millimeters plus the 17 millimeters is given as this angled length. We add those together, we get 40. And again, the formula is the same. So we have 2 times the area of the base plus the perimeter of the base times the height. Substituting in what we just calculated, we have 2 times the area, which was 60, plus the perimeter, which was 40, times the height, which we have as 9. That's going to equal 120 plus 360. And then we add those together, and we get 480 millimeters squared. So again, the formula is the same, but always recognize what the base is before finding your dimensions and then using the formula to find your